Welcome to Forensic Photography Lecture Series on the topic Crime Scene Documentation Techniques and Procedures. In here we are going to talk about the crime scene documentation techniques and the preparation of photographic report. Let's begin with our discussion on the crime scene documentation techniques. One most important tool in documenting the crime scene is through photography, and that by photographing crime scene, we can do the overlapping and the progressive methods. In overlapping method, we take a series of shots or photographs in a circular or clockwise manner na kung saan ang kuha natin ay nagkakaroon ng overlapping from the first, second, and up to the next series of shots while taking up the entire area of the crime scene. That is how to do overlapping method. On the other hand, si progressive method, we used to take the crime scene starting from a generic to an specific shots of the entire crime scene. In other words, ang ating manner na ginagawa dito is we used to take shots progressively getting to the closer. So, how to do it? Una, in overlapping method, sabi natin kanina, we used to take a series of shots to cover the entire crime scene. And that every shot, to the next, and to the next, there are always an overlapping to showcase what is within the entire crime scene. And this is how to do. Sa isang indoor crime scene, first shot will be taken habang ikaw ay nakatayo sa gitna mismo ng pintuan. And then, take the first shot, going straight forward, take the overlapping while having the second shot, and finally, take the final shot, having also an overlapping with the second shot. So there, una, pangalawa, pangatlong shots natin na magkakasunod, nakuha natin kunan ang buong area while having an overlapping within the shots. And after doing it, okay, you have to take the reverse shots para pagdating sa korte, when we will be asked, no, in any order, whether it is from clockwise or counterclockwise, from the left going to the right, or from the right going to the left, we can answer all those criticisms. And we can at any time ensure that we have or we were able to capture the entire crime scene, whether it is in an indoor or an outdoor manner. Okay, but in most instances, we apply the overlapping method, take note, in an indoor crime scene. As suggested mostly by experts, ang overlapping method is best to use in documenting or taking up a general photograph of an indoor crime scene. On the other hand, this is how to do the progressive method. First, we are going to take the generic approach or the generic view, taking up the entire crime scene, proving that there is really an area existing kung saan ang krimen ay nangyari. So first shot, we call it the overall view or the overall photograph. Then approach it progressively. We have our mid-range or medium photographs. And then approach it closer. And then you have your close-up photograph. And finally, if it is necessary still to take the very close-up view of a particular piece of evidence, then there you have your extreme close-up photograph. That is again how to do the progressive method. On some other technique, we can also have it through what you are seeing on the screen. First, take the entire crime scene general view and then approach it by taking up the area in order for you to establish the location of every piece of evidence on a particular area of the crime scene. And finally, there you have your close-up photograph of each piece of evidence in order to establish each characteristics. Again, that is from the farthest getting closer to the nearest, and there you have from the general, medium, up to close-up photographs. Another form of crime scene documentation can be done through sketching. And what is a sketch or sketching? Ang sketch ay graphic representation ng buong crime scene. When we see graphic representation, it provides us a view yung lahat ng mga manifestations ng mga bagay na nandoon sa crime scene. reflecting doon yung complete measurement with at least two fixed reference point in order to prove that there is really an existing area wherein that particular crime scene have transpired, and that we need to reflect an exact measurement, location, and of course the identification of each fixed point reference as to prove na itong lahat ng location ng bawat evidence na ating nalagay sa graphic representation is really truthful and existing doon sa crime scene na iyon. And that in doing an sketch, we have two different types to accomplish, and these are the rough sketch, the first one na ginagawa natin sa crime scene mismo. Kaya naman doon makikita natin yung rough manifestations ng paglalarawan or pagpapahayag in a drawing ng lahat ng nasa crime scene. And then finally, pag na-fulfill iyon, there is a need to have a finished or final sketch, and that there is already a clear manifestation as to the exact measurement, location, the reference point which is the north part, two fixed position as reference, and then of course yung malinaw na reflection ng mga measurement, positioning, location, and of course the legend that provides the idea kung ano itong mga naglalarawan or nakasaad doon sa ating finished sketch. This sketch is being prepared for the purpose of supplementing itong photography, no, para mas ma-strengthen yung ating pag-establish ng truthful and fitful na proof that there is really a crime scene, and that we document it, no? So itong rough sketch and finished sketch are both presented before the court, no, as part of the documentation proving that there is really a clear manifestation on the documentation of the crime scene that has been occurred. Okay, so in making a sketch, because it is part of the four different forms under the SOCO report form number 3, nandoon ang tinatawag na scene of the crime examination worksheet, particularly presenting the sketch details including its measurement. So take note of the three most important aspect na hindi dapat mawala, at ito ang pinakapangunahing hinahanap at tinitingnan natin so we can see the fitful representation of this sketch. And these are, first, the reference point, which is the position of the north. Of course, the exact measurement and location of every piece of evidence in the crime scene. And finally, yung legend. Legend that provides the idea on every reader or kahit sinong tumingin or sumuri sa sketch na iyon na siyang magbibigay ng kaalaman kung paano natin makikilala, mababasa at maunawaan ang bawat symbol, ang bawat location, ang bawat position at ang bawat measurement ng lahat ng bagay na ating na-represent doon sa sketch. At ito ang mga mahalagang information that should be included in a sketch. First, the crime scene sketcher's full name and assignment. Of course, the date, time, crime classification, and the case number which is provided by the investigator on case. The full name of the person who have assisted the sketcher in taking up the measurement. Yes, of course, the address of the crime scene or location, its position, or the nearby landmarks, buildings, establishment, streets, and of course, the reference point going to the north as compass direction has been set. Yes, of course, nandyan din dapat yung scale ng drawing, no, yung reflection ng exact measurement ng bawat piece of evidence in every fixed point references, the major discernible items of every evidence, and the critical features in the crime scene. And finally, of course, the location of each piece of evidence which shall be indicated by an accurate measurement, again, to at least two fixed reference point. Here comes another form of crime scene documentation which is called the note-taking. In note-taking, it is the transcript of record of the methods, activities, the steps, every phase of crime scene processing that has been made, starting from the first responder, arrival of the investigator on case, and the processing made by the SOCO team. So one most important note taking that should be established is the entry control log ng lahat ng mga forensic personnel or technical personnel who happens to process the crime scene. So bawat isa na pumapasok sa crime scene or sa police cordon should be documented from the time they entered, their name of course, their unit assigned, at ang rason or dahilan bakit nasa crime scene sila, including the time of leaving the police cordon or leaving the crime scene. That is the entry control log, which shall be ensured to be accomplished by our note-taking personnel. And of course, ang mahalagang impormasyon na dapat kasama sa note-taking um, on the crime scene, no? And these are the following: the date, the time, and location. The detailed description of the victim, including the clothing, the injuries, the wounds sustained, the general description of the crime scene, of course, no? Kung ito ay public place or private place, or ano ang mga conditions that may cause to contaminate or challenges that processing may be compromised, no? At siyempre, yung type of camera, including the film na ginamit, the discovery of its significant item of evidence kung saan sila na-locate, and of course, if there are reasons why ang mga expected na physical evidence ay hindi nahanap, just of course to prove na kung sakali may mga chances na kung saan nagkaroon ng contamination because of those who have arrived from the crime scene, na kung saan hindi nila nakita na ingatan at protektahan ng crime scene, lalong-lalo na yung mga bystanders, no, na they are not fully aware kung paano ba dapat i-protect or i-secure ang crime scene because of our desire na ma-control yung possible contamination. And of course, it should begin with the investigator's name and assignment over the case. And particularly in photographic documentation, and during the documentation of the crime scene through photograph, ang isang photographer should always be assisted by an assistant photographer, which shall do the recording of every shot from the first one up to the last shot. So doon sa photographer's note, it reflects the case number, of course, yung uri ng kaso, yung location kung saan ginawa ang crime scene processing, ang pizza, of course, the time they received the call, and the following important details na ang hangarin noon ay mapatunayan, magkaroon ng proof that there is really a faithful and credible na account proving that there is really a crime scene processing and that photography had been used as part of crime scene documentation. Other than that, nandyan sa apat na sheets na nakapaloob sa SOCO form number 3, yung tinatawag nating scene of the crime examination worksheet, particularly presenting the photographs taken mula sa pinakaunang shot or the first frame of the film up to the last shot. That in every shot, there should always be note taking on the aperture setting, anong particular diaphragm opening or aperture opening ang set up natin, the shutter speed adjustment, and of course, the reason why you have taken that particular shot, the lighting condition, and of course, your observation, the way how you have taken the shot. And on a separate sheet of that, there are the important details, no, proving the technical manifestations na ginawa nga natin itong photographic documentation, and that there must be a reflection of the camera used, the lens used, okay, the developing time, the fixing time, the film type, the flash unit, who developed it, the location, the date and the time, the incident, of course, who taken the photographs, who is the requesting party, and some important details kung saan na turn over itong film at saka ang camera, saan at kailan dinevelop, sino ang nag-request. All of those are accounted for the purpose of establishing yung faithful na documentation that photography had been used as one of the tools documenting the entire crime scene. Remember, of course, yung lahat ng documentations from photography, sketching, including the note-taking, that in every accounts of evidence, in every piece of evidence who happens to come from one hand to another up to the custodian of the crime laboratory, and then up to the court presentation and going back to preservation and the proper storage, proper preservation before the crime laboratory, then every account, every hands that had been transferred into all of those are being documented. And we call that the adherence to the principle of chain of custody to maintain yung faithful na integrity nitong ating ebidensya mula na na-recover sa crime scene up to sa matapos itong paglilitis sa isang particular na kaso. And of course, there should be an exact details no in maintaining that chain of custody. So nandyan yung evidence submission request form in order to prove that from hand in hand, lahat ay accounted for. Of course, those details like the case information, the date and time of the incident, name of victim, the suspect, the type of incident, the requesting agency or the agency who have received the submission of the evidence, and of course the name and contact information of the investigator on case, and all the details or identifications of every piece of evidence. And that in ensuring before the court na talagang faithful and credible ang buong crime scene documentation, ang investigator on case, the first responder, the SOCO team should have to fulfill all these crime scene investigation report forms. So here are the following: CSI Form 1, yan yung manifestation ng first responders report form, yung kanyang informations acquired upon arrival at the crime scene. The CSI Form 2, which is the request for the conduct of SOCO, which is accomplished by the investigator on case. CSI Form 4, yung turnover ng collected evidence ng investigator on case to the SOCO team for the purpose of storage and preservation. The CSI Form 4, which is accomplished by the SOCO team as far as crime scene processing by the technical personnel DHAB are concerned. CSI Form 5 is what manifests the release of the crime scene, which shall be accomplished by the investigator on case upon his order to release the crime scene after the processing. And finally, the CSI Form 6, which shall be accomplished by the investigator on case, detailing all the information acquired from the entire crime scene investigation. That ends our discussion for this particular topic, with the hope that you have reached out the learning you have expected from this particular presentation. Thank you.